Joining us now is our chief foreign editor, Rob Parsons. Rob, President Biden is making this accusation about the use of chemical weapons. How did he reach that conclusion, and how likely is Russia to carry this out?
Well, look, I don't think Biden's reached a conclusion as such. What he's raising is the possibility that Russians will use chemical or biological weapons, and his concern stems primarily from the fact that the Russians have been trying to suggest that the United States has been working in Ukraine with the Ukrainian government to develop chemical and biological weapons. It's an issue it raised that a couple of days ago at the United Nations Security Council. It was shot down by all and sundry. There was absolutely no evidence produced. But the point, I think, that U.S. intelligence and through U.S. intelligence President Biden is making here is that quite often the Russians start developing conversations like this, a sort of preparation false flag operation, and at some point they may say, look, they're developing chemical weapons in Ukraine, and that could be the excuse that the Russians will use to start using chemical weapons of their own. It's interesting that President Biden, although he has raised the issue, hasn't spoken about a red line, beyond which, if Russia crosses, the United States will take action, presumably learning the lesson from Barack Obama's experience in Syria, when he introduced a red line in 2012 and then was very circumspect about using that red line to attack the Syrians when they did cross the line. Nevertheless, he's talking about severe consequences, and I think the Russians would be very loath, I think, at this stage, when the operation's not going well for them in Ukraine anyway, to give an excuse for the Western world to get even more closely involved in the fighting on the Ukrainian side than they are already.
Yeah, especially if Putin feels like he's being backed into a corner. Rob, let's talk more broadly about how the conflict is going. The Russians continue to attack by air. On the ground, it's a different story. Russian troops are apparently running low on food and fuel.
Yeah, I mean, this is a statement that's been put out in the last few hours by the Ukrainian Defense Ministry. They're saying that the Russians have about 3 days' supplies of fuel and ammunition left. Now, whether or not this is true, there is absolutely no way we can confirm. But certainly the circumstantial evidence does suggest that this Russian war effort in Ukraine is stalling. Wherever you look, including in the south, around the city of Mariupol, which is surrounded and has been bombarded for a couple of weeks now, 3 weeks in fact, there is very little progress being made. And in some areas, we're seeing exactly the opposite happen, where the Ukrainians go on the counterattack. In the last 24 hours, small town of Makariv, some 50 kilometers or so west of Kiev, recaptured by the Ukrainians, which makes it much more difficult for the Russians to get any closer to realizing their aim of surrounding Kiev and ultimately taking it. Some suggestions are being made now that the operation is going so badly for the Russians, with massive desertions and very heavy losses. The Ukrainians suggesting as many as 15,000 Russian soldiers killed. The Americans are saying it's less than that, but still enormously high. The Russians may be beginning to reconsider their military aims in this conflict, moving perhaps away from the idea of surrounding Kiev and just settling for slicing off the southeastern corner of Ukraine, which would include, of course, Mariupol, and give Russia a corridor from eastern Ukraine through the area where Mariupol is to Crimea. No evidence for that at the moment. People are just reading the runes. But there's no doubt that the Russian war effort has stalled and is not going well.
Okay, Chief Foreign Editor Rob Parsons. Rob, thanks so much for your analysis.